Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk ETC. Today's episode is going to be on something that I believe is extremely important and will become more so in the future. We're going to be talking about payment channels and state channels, sometimes referred to as lightning networks. And I have an excellent previous knowledgeable guest, Vaibhav Saini, of Towards Blockchain, and he's going to be helping me explain why you should care deeply about this technology. So welcome, Vaibhav.
Sure, glad to be here.
Great. So why don't you can give a little spiel again on what your organization Towards Blockchain does. Why don't you remind us kind of about that so people want to look it up?
Sure. So basically, we are a blockchain company, and we are mainly focused on identity and tokens and documentation, creating a platform which solves identity, tokens, and documents in one-stop solution. And we have come up with few products which you can check up on our website. And we have also TBC Labs, in which we actually research on many innovative technologies like state channels and IPFS and other stuff.
Okay, very good. And also for the people listening, so I do a lot of research on blockchain technology, and Vaibhav, his articles are often some of the best on various subjects that I've seen. And the reason I invited him on the show to talk about channels is because he had one of the best articles and the most insight, it seemed to me, on this technology. So all right, so why don't we jump right into it? So I'm excited about this technology. I think it's going to be huge, but why don't you give us an introduction to what a payment channel, what a state channel is, and briefly how they work?
Sure. I would like to take around 15 minutes to explain that.
Okay.
State channels are a very broad and simple way to think about blockchain interactions which could occur on blockchain, but instead get conducted off the blockchain without significantly increasing the risk of the participants. The most well-known example for this strategy is the idea of payment channels and Bitcoin, which allow for instant feeless payments to be sent directly between two parties.
Yes.
In short, state channels are the general form of payment channels, applying the same idea to any kind of state altering operation normally performed on blockchain. Moving these interactions off the chain without requiring any additional trust can lead to significant improvements in cost and speed. State channels will be a really critical part of scaling blockchain technologies to support higher level use cases. Let's see an overview of how a state channel works. It can be actually divided into three simple steps. First, the part of the blockchain its state is logged via a multi-signature or some sort of smart contract, so that a specific set of participants must agree with each other, and how to update the transactions, all that stuff. Second, the participants update the state among themselves by constructing and signing transactions that could be submitted to the blockchain, but instead are merely held onto for now. Each new update trumps the previous updates. And finally, the third step is in which participants submit the state of the blockchain, which closes the state channel and unlocks the states again, usually in different configuration that in which it started.
Okay. Yes. So for the people, I want everybody to pick up on what Vaibhav said. So it occurs off of the blockchain, so you don't incur the negatives of that. So the payments happen faster and with much, much less cost. And Vaibhav also said that you don't incur virtually any additional risk. It's still trustless, just like blockchain transactions. So it almost seems like magic. You have the same security. you have faster transactions, cheaper transactions, in many cases, just outright free. And so you can see why I was excited about this technology. And then also you mentioned the details of how they work. To actually open the channel, you have to submit funds. They have to be escrowed into a multi-sig account. That's one way to do it. And then you can then do these channel payments, but then you can close the account at the end and write to the blockchain. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So do you think that this channel technology then is the magic holy grail solution that everybody's been looking for to solve the scalability problems of blockchains?
Yeah, I surely think so. Because there are a few major problems that stage channels actually improve upon the current system. It provides adequate security and trust, even if you are not actually adding all the state changes to the blockchain, like you said earlier. And it also opens up a huge variety of use cases where state changes are more frequent. For example, if you and I are playing tic-tac-toe on blockchain, it will be really expensive if we have to add each and every changes. If I added a cross and you added a zero, this will be really expensive. But what actually I want to do is just add the last score, who won the match on the blockchain. I don't actually have to add all the transactions of the blockchain. So in this case, we can actually use state channels. So there is a huge class of these applications that can be opened up using state channels.
Yes, beautiful. Yes. So I like your example of the tic-tac-toe. So there's lots of kind of minor transactions that people might want to do. And it wouldn't make sense to do the overhead, pay the overhead for blockchain tech. Also, you could imagine extremely tiny micropayments that maybe you wouldn't want to pay the overhead for that. I've been concerned ever since I started studying blockchains for the last about 3 years. I've thought blockchain technology is amazing, but I always thought, are they going to solve the scaling problem? When I discovered Ethereum, I said a general purpose blockchain system, that sounds beautiful, but can they solve the scaling problem? And for 3 years, people have been telling me sharding. That's going to just wait for sharding, and it never shows up. But now, but these channels, this is something that is already fielded in some capacity, and so this is something I could now depend on. That I don't have to worry that nobody's ever going to solve the scaling problem, because channels are going to be a big part of that. So all these applications that could use small payments, small state changes could benefit. And so that could make blockchain systems be applicable to much more applications.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I already shared that I know that these systems are already being used in some capacity, but do you have any other insight into the status of Lightning Network and then Raiden and the other, how far along, how evolved and mature they are?
Yeah, sure. Because before addressing the current development status, I would like to show what issues they are actually working on. So today, most of the people are transacting on blockchain, which is kind of slow and bit expensive. But then comes this payment channels in which we can perform, we can log funds. And when we open these state channels and do some transactions away from the blockchain, and when we are done, we close the channel and come back to the blockchain. But this approach also has an issue. Let's suppose we both open up payment channel and log some funds, but then I also have to transact with my other friend. So I need to open a state channel with him also. Now, as I may have to transact with a lot of people, I have to open state channels with everybody with whom I want to transact. this will actually become really expensive as I go forward. This problem that these two projects are aiming to solve. Radian is doing this for Ethereum and Lightning is doing for Bitcoin. They solve this problem in a really innovative way. Imagine if Alice is on a state channel with Bob and Bob is on a state channel with Carol. Now, if Alice wants to transact with Carol, she can do two things. First, she can open a new state channel with Carol, or secondly, she can use the fact that Bob already is on a state channel with Carol. So she can route her payments through Bob to Carol. If this network is expanded to a global scale, this will actually result in really interconnected and strong network, which can actually make the transactions really, really cheap and fast.
Right. Yes. So no, that's a very important point. So channels, you escrow funds, and then you can do free transactions. Two accounts can do free transactions, but then of course the problem is you don't want to have a special account for everybody that you want to do business with. So then you could make routes. You could make other people participate in intermediate transfers. And it kind of reminds me for the people that are more technically inclined, there was with private and public keys, there was PGP keys, there was what was pretty good privacy. There was something called the Web of Trust, where you would certify that your friend's key is legitimate, and then he would certify other people's, and then you'd make this decentralized network, and you could maybe connect lots of people that way. And so it's a decentralized way of connecting people through already established channels. So that is a very innovative way to avoid having to have several escrowed accounts for several channels. Also, one brilliant thing that you mentioned in one of your articles that I want to share that it hasn't come up yet is there is one security concern that you have to deal with when you use channels, and that is you're essentially exchanging all of these promises to write to settle the transaction on the blockchain, these IOUs. But you elaborated how you have to be online because otherwise somebody could potentially steal your funds. And I thought that was pretty insightful.
I did. I missed that point. While explaining the state channels, but this is a really, really big problem because either I have to stay online all the time because if let's suppose I have 100 bitcoins and you have 10 bitcoins, firstly you transfer me the 10 bitcoins, and in the second transaction I transfer the 50 bitcoins to you. So in the first transaction was not actually beneficial for you, but second transaction was. So in a scenario in which you lost your internet connection and the second transaction, I can actually go to blockchain and close the state channel. So I'm basically lying about the transactions that the second transaction never actually happened. So in order to solve this problem, you can actually delegate different servers so that in case I go offline, I can use those servers, different servers in order to do transaction for me. But this actually introduces some centralized problems, but this problem is still not solved.
So just to repeat, so we have to stay online because somebody might take the old IOUs and write those to the blockchain and ignore the more current or newer IOUs, and so that's why somebody has to be there to be able to give the blockchain the most current IOUs. But you're saying that paying another service to monitor you're saying that there's problems with that. What is the problem with that solution?
No, maybe if I have set up some servers in order to act behalf on me in case I lost my internet connection. But if someone actually hacks those like few number of servers which actually act for me, it's so like my point
Oh,
is
I
it's
see.
yeah,
Denial of
yeah, it's
service attack, things like that.
yeah,
Oh, okay. So if I was going to transfer 1,000 bitcoins to you, that would be extremely, lucrative.
yeah,
And so it might be or somebody else that's maybe not as honest as you, it might be in their interest to try to hack these servers that are
yeah,
monitoring and protecting me. So I mean, what we could both guess what a possible way to mitigate that is, right? We could have additional
yeah,
servers. We could have hidden ones that we don't make public.
yeah,
But yeah. So and that also brings up where the cost comes from. So we said that when you set up a channel, the transactions are free between the two accounts. But when you start doing these routes, when you start having these services to monitor, protect you, that's where the small fees come in. And yes, there is fees, but they're not going to be anywhere close to the cost of writing transactions to the blockchain.
yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. So I'm very bullish on this technology. I think it's this going to be a solution to a lot of problems. But do you think? Are you as optimistic as I am? Do you think it's going to be, if there eventually, if not already, this technology is going to be so easy that everybody, even people that aren't technically savvy, will be able to use channels?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like let's take an example for credit cards. Like whenever a new blockchain comes, we actually compare it with Visa or Mastercard, that their transaction speed is this, and like the blockchain speed is this. Like so comparing it with credit cards, like credit cards are also a network in which we can transact between different banks. So I absolutely think that if provide the proper infrastructure, they can easily scale to really like in millions of transactions per second. The
Right.
only thing catch is there is that like we actually don't have the infrastructure right now, but we will have that in coming years.
Yes, I love what you just said. Millions of transactions per second. We could actually have more performance than the current credit cards. So yeah, that's pretty amazing. And again, if anybody's curious how that's possible, let me just say that these channels like Lightning Network and Raiden, they don't write every single channel payment is not written to the blockchain. So you wouldn't have millions of transactions every second. A lot of them can simply be they're combined, and it's only the final balance that gets written in many cases to the blockchain. And so a lot of information never is written to the blockchain. So it's not there's no storage issues. Now, so I'm glad that you think that it's going to take over the world. Of course, the one important thing that they need to make is these intermediate transfers with other accounts, other channels. They have to make those, very easy to use, automatic if possible, so that the users doesn't even know or care.
Yeah.
And so, hopefully that's all being developed and that's far along. All right. So so obviously one problem or potential problem is they have to make it really super easy for people to use channels. Are there any other remaining problems or other things that you think we should be paying attention to that might hinder wider adoption?
Like I have a few examples that sort of show like what are the problems with state channels right now. So like let's take an example of payment channels. As we'll discuss in our previous example, I started with 100 bitcoins and you started with 10 bitcoins. So we had to lock our funds, and we can't add more funds or reduce our funds without closing the state channel. And in life, most of the times we don't actually know it beforehand how much we are going to spend. So if I end up locking more funds that than I actually needed, it would be bad because those funds could be used elsewhere, maybe in some other state channel. But in this case, those funds are rendered illiquid until we close the state channel and unlock those funds. Also, taking the opposite scenario, if I end up locking fewer funds, I need to close the state channel in order to start a new state channel with more funds. Now, this is one of the biggest problems that limit the number of state channel use cases. This scenario that I just described was just for payments, but this reveals a much bigger and general problem of state channels, that when we use state channels, we need to define every aspect of the situation. In real life, there are a lot of things that can go wrong. So, in order to handle those situations, we need to define what should the judge smart contract do when the things go wrong. And there is no possible way that we can determine every aspect of every situation. So also there are problems with orchestrating multi-party transactions as they are more complex to define. So mainly the problem here is that uh, you have to define every possible outcome that can go wrong, so that in case something goes wrong, the contract that is acting as a judge can actually do the right thing.
Right, right. So no, that is definitely something I could see why you would be concerned about that. Yes, with the way channels work, to repeat again, is you escrow, you lock funds in a special account, and that's part of the security, is that you can't remove those funds until you close the channel, and that might be problematic. At best annoying, and at worst you've locked your funds and you can't get to it when you need it, or at least for a while. So yes, that is something to be concerned about. And then yes, the security, anticipating all the issues that could come up with these intermediate transfers, that's definitely something that needs to be investigated. What will my guess of what will happen, Vaibhav, is we will field these channels. The whole world, or millions of people, will use them for small transactions. And maybe there'll be some problems, and maybe people will lose a small amount of money, but then hopefully they'll learn from the mistake and fix the problem. But maybe we'll test it for a long time with small accounts, small funds, and then
this example was specifically for the payment channels, but like when we go for much general use cases, like the example that I took from the tic-tac-toe, like maybe you can use it in some other cases in which we don't actually transact the actual money. In that cases, the problem with defining the situation is more general in
Oh, I see. You're saying for the general case, it may not be, if you have a very custom special situation, the security implications might not be as analyzed as understood. Yeah, that's a good point.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, also, if anybody listening is unclear, the difference between a payment channel and a state channel. So typically, the people think about channels as used for transfers of tokens, and that's certainly an important application. But you could imagine a general case where you have a general variable that is changed, and so that in general you have a state that is being changed. So state channel, what I'm trying to say is a state channel is the more general term, and a payment channel is just a specific type of state channel. But you like the tic-tac-toe example, that doesn't involve funds, but it's still the change of state, and so that could also be done over the same technology. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Very good. So do do you have any predictions on, or do you have any thoughts on the near future? Do you think that people are going to start using these, millions of people, or do you think we need to wait a few years? What do you think we could expect in the near future? Any thoughts on that?
Like recently on Twitter, one of my friends from India who is running a crypto startup actually launched a Bitcoin-based payment channel system, and like a lot of people have started using that. So like it's not that we have to wait for like 10, 15 years to see it in action. We actually are seeing it action right now.
Okay, so it's so it's going to be coming faster than we think. A lot of people. I had this idea while I was waiting for the show to start. A lot of people use private blockchains because you have more performance, you have lower cost. The same reasons people use these channels is the same reasons people use private blockchain. So I had the idea: what if you implemented a private blockchain with channels? And then you could have a trustless private blockchain. I don't know if somebody's thought of that. Any thoughts on that?
Basically, I think the transactions that two people do in a state channel are basically private, because if the intermediate transactions are not actually published to the blockchain, only the outcome of those transactions are public on the are made public on the blockchain. So if there is something which we actually want to do in private, we can actually do that in the intermediate transactions, and the outcome will be like sort of different when it goes to Bitcoin, on the main blockchain.
Right. So people could, these entire permissioned blockchains might benefit from a lot of channels to increase security. Okay, very good. So yes. So did I forget anything? I think we've given a great introduction. Is there anything else that you want to add before we end the show?
No, I think it was a pretty good introduction on state channels.
Yes. So thank you, Vaibhav, for helping me explain channels. I think it's going to be very promising. It's already being useful in the world.
Yeah.
Yes. So everybody stay tuned and pay attention to these channels. They're going to be big. They're going to keep being even more important in blockchain space. So yes.
Yeah.
All right. So best wishes to you until we meet again.
Sure. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.